بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. We welcome all of you to another session of our nightly live talks during this Black History Month. It was something that we wanted to do where we would get to meet all of the brothers and sisters who attend our lessons and our classes, the Black Imam Roundtable, Post-Fajr Reflections, and other than that. And we wanted to get to know them and get to talk to them and, learn their stories and see how we can, strengthen the family ties that we have developed over this last year. And inshallah, tonight we have our beautiful, beloved Sheikh of the Post-Fajr Reflections, Isa Abdul-Zahir, a beloved brother to my heart, a very diligent brother that I've been watching for quite some time now and listening to him. He has his own platform. What is it called?
What the
what?
The Soul from Black Muslim men's mental health. The Soul from Black Muslim men's mental health.
Do you have the link for that you do, or is this something you put up?
Yeah, I have the link.
If we can find it, we'll share it.
Yeah,
later.
I know how to do all that, right?
So, is a brother that's really been active and trying to do things and many issues. So we wanted to have our conversation with, our family and sit down and have a evening of discussion. And we invite all of you to ask questions and share with each other. And inshallah, it'll be something beneficial that we can all enjoy. So Sayyidi Isa, inshallah, please, give us some information about yourself and your background and your Islamic upbringing, or tell us about that, inshallah. Now,
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to our Imam and the whole family 3453. I appreciate you having me on. So briefly, I come from parents who embraced Islam, so I didn't have to worry about making that journey to Islam by myself. My father, his side, he came from a line of strong Black men. His great-grandfather had to flee the South, the rural South of Georgia, to come up north to Cleveland, Ohio, after he hit a white man in the head with a shovel for trying to sexually molest his wife. And his father, my great-great-grandfather, was tipped off to get him out. He was a Mason and was tipped off somehow to get his boy out of town. And so my great-great-grandfather was a slave born in the 1850s. So he came uptown, he came to the north and was a Garveyite. My grandfather was one of the leaders in Akron, Ohio, as far as Black civic leaders. On his mother's side was a side of spiritual women. His grandmother on his mother's side would go to the woods and fast and pray for 40 days facing the east. And one time she got so close that a wolf came upon her and she could smell the wolf's breath, And we think about, we don't realize how big a wolf is, until unless we saw one or saw a picture of it, in comparison to like a coyote or something like that. But she said the story came down, it was so close that she could smell his breath. So he came from a line of spiritual women and his mother, before he was born, she refused to rub any cream on her stomach that had contained pork. She said, "My baby's gonna be special." So that's where his line came from. And my mother, her father was a strong, silent. You mean not a big man, but he was, a family man, handling his business. And when my mother, when she took her shahada, he had to calm down my grandmother because she was like, "Oh no, my baby's going to join the cult." You mean back in those times, a lot of people didn't know, depending where you were at, they didn't know a lot about information about Islam. And my grandmother thought it was a cult, but my grandfather had told her like, it's just another religion. So he gave her the confidence, to go and make her own decisions. And my father, he came the route of, even though he was, so like a middle class type family. With his father, insurance man and business, a tax business, and his the mother that raised him. He lost his biological mother at 4, so the mother that raised him was a nurse. They were pretty decent, but it was the streets was like revolutionary action in the streets, And for some reason, he was drawn to the streets, even though he was not. Didn't have to be. So, but he got involved in it early in his teenage years with the Black nationalist organizations. Can't remember exactly which one. And he almost got some long time behind that, And that's where he first learned about dhikr, when he was in a holding cell and he was worried, facing time, and there was a brother in there that told him just to say these words, and it was a certain supplication that he had. So he heard about Malcolm, had a chance to meet Malcolm, but he was like 14 and wasn't ready yet. But he was influenced by Malcolm, and he his first time he got moved by the name of Allah was in the Nation Temple, and he it just did something to him here in the name of Allah. He didn't come directly to the nation, but they had the influence of that, and he had the respect because of knowing about Malcolm and learning about Malcolm, being moved by the strength of Malcolm, and never really feeling right about Christianity, because he was like a strong type of, he couldn't get with the turn the other cheek type of stuff and all that. So he talked about, when he heard the certain ayahs of the Quran, how it moved him, like knocking the brain out of falsehood, the way it was translated. I don't know. So he got hooked up through the Dar. The Dar had spread to Accra. The Dar Islam movement had spread to Accra, and it was already an imam in place by the time he took Shahada. So he came to the Dar, and he became an imam young, and we can talk about that. Later, I guess, if it comes up, and he, after the Dar, after the Fulcrum, the brief stay in the Fulcrum after the split, he left for his own personal reasons, and it was a lot of stuff going on at the time. That was some very, very tough times, for the Muslims and Black Muslims in general. So, but he raised us in a small town. He came to Canton, Ohio, and he raised us in Canton, and that's where I was raised all my life. That's where I lived all my life. Went to college briefly, and then I came to Columbus to get married. So I guess that's 5 minutes,
Now, question you. So you talked about your father.
Mm-hmm.
He came into Islam by being exposed to the nation, and then
Mm-hmm.
ultimately coming through the Darul Islam movement. And
Mm-hmm.
you said your mother, she became a Muslim. What was her, because she was Muslim, before she met your father, right?
Yeah. Yes. Kind of. Yes. And see, what happened was she had she was coming to Akron to study at Akron U. She had graduated from Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, because she was raised in Cleveland. My father was raised in Akron. He's 7 years older than her, so he was already Muslim before, but he was already imam of a community in Akron. The only Black mosque in Akron. But she had met her first husband in Akron, and he influenced her to come to Islam, you know. And then when they married, you mean he was already he was my father's, what they would say, a first Amir, you mean. So
Oh,
by her
so she
coming in,
was in the door as well, not
yeah, she,
nation, nothing.
no, yeah, she came to the, when she became Muslim, she came to the Dar. Her first husband, you know, was my father's Amir, you know.
And what age were when the Dar had split with from the Fuqara Jama'atul Fuqara? How old were you during this time?
I wasn't born yet. I
Oh, you
was
wasn't
3.
born.
I
How old
wasn't
are
born.
you?
I was, huh?
How old are you?
I'm 37.
You should be on the youth program.
No, but look.
Okay, so your experience, these are all narrations that you're relating. That you
Yeah,
didn't experience them.
mostly narrations from my father, narrations from my mother, narrations from his security Amir, who I'm in contact with, you know. And
So when you're coming up in Islam was under what type of Islamic understanding from you when you were raised with?
when I was raised, we weren't part of any movement, you know. After the Fulcrum, he didn't join any other movements, you know. He didn't, you know, it was.
What was so now as you older and you can identify? See, one of the things that what I discuss in tracing the history of Islam in the Black community is I tried to be very precise in learning from where you learned about Islam, right?
Okay.
So that we can, I'm talking about with all of us, so that we have a certain understanding of where things come from, so that we can know where we're at now. So that's when I ask those type of questions. So like from now, you're a little older and you identify certain things, you've learned certain things. How would you describe the understanding of Islam that you were raised in? What type of methodology was that?
The default Wahhabi.
And what do you mean by that?
Not having any madhab, taken from the you know, the Quran and Sunnah slogan, where you got a translation of the Quran, you got a translation of Bukhari, and you reading on your own and stuff like that, you know. But and the fiqh sunnah, but the fiqh sunnah that started, you know, in the Dar. My father was going at 19. He was taking a bus from Akron to Pittsburgh while he was in the Dar, because like every community in the Dar wasn't necessarily on their same. They had some leeway of what they could study on their own and stuff like that. I mean, that's why you had some that were studying the Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab books. You had some that were studying fiqh sunnah and stuff. So it depends, you know what I mean, on what they chose to study. So he was going to Pittsburgh to study fiqh sunnah. It was like a Pakistani teacher that he had there. So that carried all the way over, you know, to by the time I was coming up, because he had made a brief stop in Egypt, unplanned stop in Egypt when I was like 6, 7 years old. You mean, doing business, he had a friend, and his friend had a son studying over there, and he invited him to go over there. And what I just realized now was they sent back some books as like a fiqh sunnah in Arabic. I couldn't read. You mean, I'm learning Arabic, so it's not that good, but I was able to make it out finally. Like, oh, this is fiqh sunnah. So he didn't get the full exposure like he was supposed to get, because it was a brief visit, and they sent back like fiqh sunnah in Arabic and the translations of Bukhari, the full set. You mean, with the Dr. Muslim Khan, and all that, you know. So that further pushed those wrong the wrong methodology, you know.
Okay, so and you're coming up. Did you come up in a real religious home, or we're Muslims but religion is not pushed on us? What type of home did you come up in as you grew up, and to what age, or did it go all the way up to your adulthood?
Yeah, it was definitely religious. We definitely had to learn and pray, and he'll hang up on girls or something. Like he'll tell the girls that, and then a lot of talk to girls. And that was I was talking to my brother about that. I did a show on my program with one of my brothers who made it to marriage as a virgin. He was one of the three in our blended family. Because it was a blended family. Where we had what they would say step, but we didn't use the term step. We didn't use half or nothing like that. Because my father had two wives for most of my childhood, and one of his wives had children from a previous marriage. My mother had one child. She was a widow, but so we didn't use step or anything like that. Now I'm losing track what I was talking about. What
You
were
was
you
talking
saying?
about, you was talking about growing up, like the religious home.
Oh yeah.
Home.
So the thing about it the thing about that, like I said, I was talking to my brother about that during the interview with him. That my father, even though he grew up, he was like a bad boy. He had a shirt like when he was in high school. I'm the one that your mother warned you about. He was 14 years old. 15 years old. He got hooked up with a grown woman. It was somebody's mistress. He almost got killed behind that. Folks didn't play about their mistresses like that. So, but with him, they didn't play. So, with him coming to Islam, he didn't like, oh, well, I did this when I was young. No, he had high expectations for us, despite whatever sexual activity he had growing up. He had high expectations for us. And I think that's one of the reasons why a couple of my siblings were able to be successful and to make it to marriage as virgins, even going to the inner city schools. Like especially like a group of us, when we went to the blackest, to the school close to the projects. And we're in the same public school environments, same inner city areas, and then but we had a couple that made it to marriage as virgins. But it was always, for all of us, it was a strict standard. To stay away from that activity. Drugs, all that. To pray. We exposed to different things. We exposed to history. We go on to visit museums. We go in here and there, doing security at events and stuff at young ages and stuff like that. It was a lot of stuff to keep us active, to keep us away. So none of us got mixed up in the streets. None of us really had any desire to get in the streets.
So, so you grew up in like having a lot of activity in the masjid, or was basically just family, or were y'all like involved with a masjid, like community masjid life, or was it because you said he was an imam, right?
Yes.
So did he maintain the community after that for a period of time? Is he still alive today or no?
No, he died in 2017.
Oh, so was he? Did he die as an imam or
Yes,
no?
yes, he was still an imam. Yes.
So how many years was he an imam with his
Um.
own masjid, as the leader of a masjid, should I say?
So yeah, it was two times. The first time was in Akron. From 70, 72, 73 to 83, the year I was born. And then he couldn't. Akron police didn't want him back in Akron, and they had lost the masjid because they went to California. It was a group. It was a group. It was groups. It was a lot of different communities that went out to California with the Fukra. And the masjid in Akron was not owned. So coming back, they lost that masjid, and a lot of people didn't even come back. Some people stayed in California. Some people went back to their hometowns. So that was the end of the Akron community after that move to California, which was less than a year, but it was a lot of stuff that went on where some people, saw some stuff they didn't like, and it was in the community. And plus, the Akron police didn't want him to come back anyway. They did not want him back in Akron. So Canton community started, but it was no Muslims in Canton. It was some immigrant Muslims that had a masjid that they would use for like Eid and that's it. So it was no black Muslims. It would be Juma. They would be doing Juma. It'd be like 2 people, and for several years. And so he would be going up to Akron, hooking up with some brothers who were just out of the nation in the late 80s and were coming to Islam from the nation. And he was working with them, because he was community minded. And in the early 90s, he just, I guess after Sudan, that did something for him, because he went to Sudan for a few weeks at the same time that he went to Egypt. And he didn't want to get back in. He didn't want the weight of being an imam again, But when he was in Sudan, it was a sheikh in Sudan who had some spiritual experiences with where since we like stories, I shared a brief story. He was on a bus and he saw this beautiful woman in Sudan. It was like, wow. So he gets to this little masjid in Umdurman. He's in Khartoum, which was amazing stuff that he saw. People come out the bank with stacks of money like this, and he's from the urban environments. He went to New York before. He used to visit New York, so he knew about the streets and stuff. Like, aren't you worried somebody's gonna take your money from you? And he said the brother just said, like, why would somebody take what's not theirs? And so it was that type of environment there. He dropped some money, some American money. And it was somebody that had like limbs missing, crawling, like gave him his money, like what's wrong? What's going on with this? So that was the type of environment that he came to, this little masjid in Sudan, and it was this little African black sheikh, couldn't speak English. He had a translator. He comes in, it's time to pray, and they translate, tell him to go make wudu. So he goes make wudu, like, all right, got wudu. He comes back out, they tell him, Sheikh has him translate, go make wudu. Like, okay, he does makes wudu. And I think it was at least a third time he said, go make wudu. And he's like, okay, this time he's concentrating, he's getting every little detail, he's taking extra time and doing some dhikrs and stuff. And then the sheikh said, now she's not on your eyes anymore. And he's like he tried to play it off like what lady, He's like, so he started describing it, what she was wearing and everything like that, So then he had some conversations with him afterwards, and we welcomed. He was very welcoming, like our brothers from America. Like have confidence in you. And he interpreted a dream for him, the same dream that he had in Egypt about a baby it was a funeral, and it was like they interpreted that he would help revive dead hearts in America. So, but the sheikh was very, very his adab and everything, and his confidence in him. He encouraged him that he still had his mission to do, And it's at the time where he was like just on the road. He's on the road like 48 weekends out of the year. He even met like Elijah Wan or somebody on the road, Clyde Drexler or somebody. He didn't even know who they was because he was on the road so much. He just worried about taking care of his large family. He wasn't thinking about becoming an imam. Canton, Ohio wasn't no community, but the sheikh told him he still had a mission. So that's how he started from scratch in Canton, where it was just some young brothers that would come in. Some of them would leave, but he started fresh. Like somebody had to be, some people had to get positions because there was no other options, And he wasn't, it was nobody around him of his age. These young brothers, they just starting, with their families and stuff like that. So it wasn't a lot of money. So they operating out of the masjid that the immigrants had that they didn't ever use, So they operating out of there, somebody had to be the emir. So his emir was 20 something, 1920 something, 1920 something like that. So it started fresh from like that. For a while, it was just small like that, just operating within the mosque, having meetings and stuff like that. Juma, but it wasn't any daily prayers or anything like that. And that went for a while until the city took over the Masjid to build a school. You mean, and it was supposed to be something. You mean with those other immigrants who had the deed and everything like that, where it was supposed to be money given to build a new Masjid. You mean, but that never happened. It was supposed to be one in Canton. So I went away to college for a little bit. I came back, and they were going to the next town over to make Juma, or going 30 minutes to Akron to make Juma, because the Masjid was gone. And so then within the next 2 years, somebody wanted to dedicate a Masjid, and it was like, who's going to be the imam? It was a couple of African brothers who had somebody of theirs who was interested, but it was like they conceded, like my father already had a community that wasn't dependent, because he still kept his community going without a building. I mean, they still stayed organized. They still did events. They still kept leadership. You mean, they still did IS and everything like that. They still went to Juma wherever they went to. So that building, this is 2004 or 5. You mean, I'm back home. I'm dropped out. I had to drop out of college because I couldn't handle it. You mean, it was depression and anxiety, what I didn't know at the time what was going on, but I had to drop out. So, I had a lot of time, and I came to realize later, that I needed the time, because we were starting fresh again, and within a few months of opening the Masjid, we had 5 daily prayers for the first time in the city. And with me not working, I was the muazzin, so I'm there for five prayers a day. And we just started from there, and got back to having programs like my father had the food program, and during the summers especially, where we would feed the neighborhood. Like, people would pass out flyers and stuff like that, and just have different people. The neighborhood was a mixed neighborhood, blacks, whites, some Hispanics, and they would come, and we'll feed them. And sometimes you hear stuff like, "Oh, this is the only meal that I had today," or stuff like that. So just being a part of that, was good. And dawah, going to the projects in different neighborhoods and doing dawah and stuff like that. So I had the time, and actually, that was like the time of my life, to be honest. At my brokest, no money. I had to, if I got money, it was from my parents. No money, couldn't hold a job. Because I didn't know what was going on at the time, because I wasn't diagnosed. But I was a time of my life, because I was 10 minutes walking distance away from the Masjid. We just happened to be, we had already lived in that house before that Masjid opened up. We was in that Masjid since I was in high school, but that just happened to be the same neighborhood that the new mosque opened up in. So it was 10 minutes of walk. So I was able to walk to the Masjid, for all the prayers, rain, snow, and all that. So it was great times, and I was able to be the muazzin and just be available for different things, and spend time with my father, and learn the history of his time as the imam and all that, and so
I'm gonna take some of the questions. We're going for 30 minutes left, so they're going to be kind of over all the different stuff you talked. So you might have to go back and come forward and go back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just take them in order as they were placed. And you can see it there. Malik put, what influenced you to learn a more traditional understanding of Islam? For instance, Ash'ari Aqidah and following a specific madhab.
Okay. So the seed was already planted early, like when I first got serious. First got serious about practicing, because when I went away to college, I wasn't serious about practicing. I definitely didn't want to give up my Islam, but I wasn't making my prayers on time, all that, into the party life and all that stuff, But when I came back, my father had some talks with me, some boosting talks with me, and really motivated me to first have some confidence. To practice properly, have some confidence. To have a future. I wasn't even thinking about no future at the time. I was that bad. But he really motivated me with some stuff that he said. To have some confidence. Really showed me where Allah allowed him to show me his traces of whatever he had. For me to see some stuff. And it was like wow. It really opened me up to wanting to practice Islam right. So that was the start. Because before then, I wasn't even caring about practicing right. I had in my mind it was a time where I wanted to get right, but that's just like procrastination and stuff. Oh, I'm only going to do this, or I'm gonna get right next year or something like that. But I was like, when that was the time coming back from home when I was ready. Okay, I'm ready to practice. And he told me about the 4 madhabs. So he told me about the 4 madhabs. So it was like his team was like, we're not ready for that yet. But I want you to go to school. He wanted to send me somewhere, to study, somewhere in Africa, in Senegal. But that never came together, and I wasn't firm on my intentions either. For it to come together anyway. So who knows? But a couple years into just being home, I reached a point where I was like looking at a certain issue, a certain case, a certain Islamic case. And when I got it wrong, just trying to read on my own, I reached out to somebody that was online who was Maliki, who had added through the Facebook, and they were in contact with me and allowed me to ask them questions. And I was like, dang, I'm just tired of being wrong and being this wrong about stuff that's serious issues. So that I made the decision to try to study the Maliki madhab, because the brothers who were on Facebook on my list were Maliki. So I got in touch with one. I had, was able to ask questions like that, whenever I wanted. And it was another brother, who I was able to call, and gave me some basic teachings of the basic text, the Akhdari, and one of the basic texts, the Maliki text. But it was a couple years later. I didn't hear about Ashari and Maturidi until I was almost 30 years old. Didn't even know nothing about that, And when I did learn about that, it was watching videos of Abdul-Rahman Sandalandi, Imam Lukman's nephew, and it was, I was like, wow, okay, So I was interested then in trying to be Ashari, wanted to be Ashari then, but it still was not a lot of push. It was still like a lot of shutdown. Like people would, if you bring it up, you argue, and you just trying to argue and stuff like that. So it wasn't no structured live environment for me to learn. He had some group that he was starting, but the environment wasn't there for people who were not physically present with him to be able to get in there. So I didn't really get firm in there. Even though I recognize those beliefs, the basic beliefs and stuff. This definitely is my beliefs. Those basic points. Where we talk about the 13 attributes. Necessary to believe. Like, okay, yes, but it wasn't firm. And definitely it wasn't firm until this COVID thing where Imam Amin got out his old ways and decided to come new and teach online, you know. And then it was running. Then, you know, then I was like, okay, I'm really taking the Ashari for myself, you know what I mean? And and at the same time, Imam Naeem was rolling, you mean? And he's rolling with the Maliki thing. He had already been rolling. He was, you mean, influencing me stuff, you mean, through the years and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So I got firmer on that, and he was teaching classes. So, because I even though I was Maliki, I had sort of got away from it for a little, not got away completely, but I was sort of like wishy-washy with it a little bit. Like, but this COVID year really was a blessing in showing me for all that.
So just quick question. What madhab you are like basically adhering to now?
Maliki.
Yeah, Miskeen. SubhanAllah.
But I'm learning the Shafi.
Sunnah. It's all good. It's all good. No shots at the Malikis today. Right? No, mashallah. Barakallahu bikum. May Allah continue to increase you and let you go forward. Here goes another question. Growing up as a child with parents in polygamy, do you find it difficult to explain it to non-Muslims, like your friends or your peers?
No, I don't remember any difficulties trying to explain anything. My father was very proud of and very open with people about his. And he would tell people that he had 2 wives but 1 family. So we would take trips together, vacations together, you know, family reunions together. I had access to my siblings, you mean, where like I can go over to their house like whenever I wanted to, especially when the house that I spent most of my childhood in that he purchased from his business. It was a duplex, and we had the attic where we had a door. It was a door where I didn't have to go outside and knock on the front door. We can just go through the attic. I mean, so all that, you mean, was such normal to us, the way it was structured. Like, we didn't look at it like it was something that wasn't normal. We looked at it was like normal, like polygyny was normal to us. So it was nothing to feel like I had to be shy about explaining it, or you mean, or if somebody wanted to ask, they could ask, you know. It was, and you know, so I don't know.
Growing up, you know, since you're from Ohio, did you participate in the Riyadh Games, which was hosted in Cleveland?
No, I never did. And like, we was like really out the way, you know, because it was some wild stuff, you know, in those times of the Dar and the Fukra and stuff like that. We really weren't independent. You mean, like, you figure, like, with the California thing, it wasn't no internet, wasn't no Facebook, stuff like that. So when people split up, one of my siblings, my brother, you know, by my mother, you mean, who's my brother, from my mother before she was married to my father when she was widowed. He had siblings on his father's side, you mean, who we didn't see for years. Well, they didn't see for years. You mean, I was real young because I was born that same year of the split. So I mean, not the year of the split. I was born the same year of the California move. When we went out to Compton, California. He had siblings that we lost touch. It wasn't no way to get in touch with people. You mean, it was a lot of wild stuff. You mean, that went on. You mean, it was real. It was real stuff. You mean, so my father making the decision, you mean, to be solo was for real reasons. You mean, people got killed. You know what I mean? It was real life. People got killed. People had beef. You had the police. You mean, who, whether you was at the top of the Dar where they was raiding, where they had FBI involved raiding people. You mean, during that time, sending agents in, because these people, it was like, y'all taking over communities. They was taking over communities. Even in Akron, you mean, they took over the community that they was in, ran the drug dealers out the community. You mean, had to have a showdown with them where they came at the mosque like they wanted to. They came out to the mosque with guns. You mean, they had to turn them away with guns. You know, they had to shut down immigrants that try to open the store. Like, you can't open up the store in this community. One incident where they took control of the community was somebody who had disrespected my father's first wife, and he was like, "Get the brothers." So they went, and they had his security mirror had nunchucks and stuff. You know what I mean? And they led him into, it was all positioned, led him into a little ambush. You mean not with guns? You mean, but he had the nunchucks and was whipping them up. And that time they ran because they had to be tough. You had to put down. You mean you had to be strong on all levels, because you had to be strong dealing with the community, dealing with the police, dealing with other communities. So you mean it's not hidden anymore. It's even in books. Like, I have two of the dark books where it talks about the history and stuff like that, where you got the history where people died, you mean, from infighting and stuff. You mean it's the history is there. You mean at the top level, it's talking about Imam Yahya Abdul Karim and what's Imam Tawfiq from the MIB. Where was the incident? You mean in the main mosque of the Dar on Herkimer Street, where guns were drawn, and the security detail fired shots, and a couple from each side died. You know, and that intensity was on different levels in different communities like that. You mean where certain issues happened like that. You had to be ready. It was a tough time. So by the time we left the Fukra, it was for real reasons, and it was real reasons for him to be solo. You mean, so he really, you mean, died looking over his shoulder. You mean, my older siblings, they were actually, I have some siblings that were old enough to be in the Dar. They have their own stories. You mean, that remember how real it was and stuff. You mean, you know, like I said, my brother by my mother, his father was killed. You mean, and that was my father's Amir, and so stuff was real. It was real. He had real reasons to stay solo. Who do you trust? You know what I mean? Who can you trust? You know what I mean? And with that, if any information that came as far as the dean, we was like cut off from that, but we was surviving. Like, who can you really trust? You know what I mean? So that hurt in a way, as far as not being a part of a community, of being a part of a connected community with other communities and stuff like that, because when they were connected, you mean they had their own slaughtering houses and stuff like that. You didn't have to worry about, could you eat this mechanically slaughtered chicken or not, because they was doing their own slaughter and stuff like that. Even on the local level. You mean, like the Dar, they started on the top level, but on the local level, my father at one time had his own slaughter operation, but wasn't getting the support. But they was doing stuff like that, where they was only eating halal and stuff like that. But when you break up organizations like that, and they already don't have the methodology to begin with, you mean, to teach, then that breaks the strength. You mean, so we heard from a lot of stuff like that. You mean, so it took a while to get back, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until I was almost 30 years old till I was fully exposed to what this quote unquote traditional Islam really is. You know, and I'm still learning, obviously. Yeah.
Don't worry, Sheikh. You're doing a great job in your learning process. Even they're praising your fast responses to the most advanced Islamic questions in jurisprudence. MashaAllah. What do you think can be done to promote Islamic marriage in the African American Muslim communities?
Whoa.
I told you we're getting sparky, Habibi. Get ready.
That's the heat right there. You gotta have that leadership, but when you know better about the statement of Ali, when it was a conflict when he with the battle of the camel, and then with the death of Uthman, was the dispute about getting the revenge on behalf of Uthman, peace be upon them both, or establishing leadership in Ali was rightly said to establish the leadership first, but like us establishing leadership, you got people that want to establish leadership, but on a methodology that just doesn't work with us. You know what I mean? We got to have something to lead people with, and all this stuff hasn't worked for us. You mean we see we can glorify the past, we can glorify our different movements like that, but they really were doing good despite of the methodology they had, not because the methodology that they had. We got to get what the deen that was prevented from us, that they kept away from us. We got.
Repeat that again. That is a powerful statement you just said. They were successful despite. Repeat that again.
Yeah, they were successful. They were just successful despite the methodology that they had, not because of the methodology that they had.
SubhanAllah. That's strong. Wow.
Because you figure they came from parents, who were still part of strong black families and stuff, where you had the Black Power movement and all that. But they had families, black families coming from the South and everything like that. So they had real men and women and stuff like that. We can't level the playing field except through having the deen that they didn't have. We can't compete with them as far as the men and women that they had to start off with. Maybe in a couple of generations if we do it right. But right now we don't. If we be honest, we don't have the same strength as far as the men and women. To compete like that. Only way we can level the playing field is by having the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's with the majority of Muslims in every time and place. The Ash'ari, Maturidi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, Hanafi, and Tasawwuf, practicing the accepted path with Tasawwuf. That's where the support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been and what has been kept away from us. And that's the only way that we can level the playing field is with that. And then, with effective leadership with that, and connected leadership. Like we can't have our cities, our communities on their own trying to do it. We got to be connected. It got to be working together. With those who are, successful in what they're doing. Those communities like yours that are successful have to be helping, assisting those that's getting started. It has to be a collective effort. Because we are under attack. We're the target. What was it? Menace to Society, where he's Charles S. Dutton is talking to Kane, and he's like, the hunt is on, and you're the hunted. So we hunted being black and being Muslim. On two fronts. So we can't be isolated with it. We need all the training, all the education, and we need that base of the firm, the accepted methodology. We need the resources to pull our resources together. It's a lot.
But so you're of the opinion that Farouk need to give more money.
I'm not gonna hate on Farouk.
I just had, since you mentioned it, question: how open or welcome do you think Masjid are in dealing with believers afflicted with mental health?
I don't know, because I don't travel everywhere, but I know back home where I was, at my home masjid, it was like the masjid where everybody knows your name and stuff like that. They loved me there and stuff like that. They didn't even question me not working and stuff like that. Because it'd be like a whole year before I got diagnosed. It'd be like a whole year not working, a year and a half not working and stuff like that. I talked to one brother. He was just like, "Oh, I just thought you was in imam training. You mean? I thought you didn't have no job because you was in imam training. So I didn't get no pressure, no bad energy, no bad. You know what I mean? I didn't get none of that. So I don't know about all the other masjids. You mean? And here, this the masjid I go to in Columbus, you know, is see, Columbus is, we scattered, like is a small Worthim masjid where they the only ones really holding it down. You mean, it's a Salafi masjid. Then you got a lot of immigrant African masjids like that. But it's like we scattered. Like people don't even know they come into Islam. You can't really blame them because they don't know anybody. They come to Islam, they just think stuff this is how it's supposed to be. That we supposed to just be scattered. We go to this immigrant masjid, we here, but we didn't got nothing of our own really. And we really could be doing a lot more because there's a lot of black Muslims in Columbus, but we just scattered and stuff like that. But the Worthim masjid, you mean, they really embrace me. They love me, you mean. They let me give khutbahs and stuff like that. And they got a new generation, you mean, that's rolling, that's already, you mean, rolling and stuff like that and stuff. So I haven't got any bad feedback as far as mental health and stuff like that. I just think it's the education is not there. You mean, the education is not there. People still stuck in you must be possessed or something like that. We need to do some type of exorcism or something, Islamic exorcism or something, or you just need to pray it away or fast it away. They look at it as like it's something that happens to adults. You mean, when often you mean people have deep rooted issues from childhood and stuff like that, where they can't even process what's going on and stuff like that. So there's a lot of education. There has to be a way to get that education into the masjid. You mean, you need to have people in the masjid, you mean, in positions where that's what they do. They have a position in the masjid that they experts, almost, or experts in a sense, in dealing with mental health, because that's a real issue going on for our men and our women that's contributed to bad marriages and a generation of Muslims coming up who will not practice Islam or leave Islam or just have Islam in name because of these bad situations and stuff that we find ourselves in. So I think it's big. It's really, really not given the attention that it deserves, because it's a real big issue. And it's a real key issue that we need to get together.
Farouk asks, are you Maliki or Shafi in fiqh? And you answered that already. Maliki becoming Shafi. Mashallah. Farouk, we just gotta, put a little bit more donations for Dawah to Shafi'iyya, and inshallah we'll be all right. Okay. More questions. I think we're done. Okay, growing up into yourself learning Islam proper, how influential was Imam Hamza Yusuf in your studies of Maliki fiqh?
I have to give him credit for being influential, because just of the fact, you mean, that some of his videos were made available, you mean, with that default, you got to study on your own. So I still have some traces of that when I decided to be Maliki, you know what I mean? Because I'm used to studying my own, you know what I mean? I'm a mushy here, you know, I can go straight to the source or something, you mean, go straight to the English source. But the availability, you mean, where I'm at in Canton, Ohio, where I was at in Canton, Ohio, I was the only Maliki there, you mean? So I had to take it how I can get it. So it was somebody posted Hamza Yusuf doing a commentary on Ibn Ashur, the book of Ibn Ashur, his Maliki text. So you mean going through that, and he did a good job of showing history and stuff like that. And so he had some a lot of influence on me being Maliki even.
Tanwir said he heard about the Dar when he first embraced Islam in '89, but he don't know much about them. What does the Dar stand for?
Ooh. Wow. I think it's just the Arabic, whatever it means in Arabic, the land, the abode of Islam. It's nothing. It's not an acronym. I don't think That's
Dar Islam, meaning when they wanted to establish their own communities instead of being in Dar al-Kufr, they established within Dar al-Kufr their own Dar al-Islam, their own abode of Islam, right? Inside that was the tension. I actually have in the Masjid the first newspapers that were written for the Dar.
SubhanAllah.
I have all those papers, like the original, because one of the writers from the Dar was a friend, like a close friend of one of my teachers. So they gave me all of those things, mashallah. So maybe that's some things we can do in the archive discussion one day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I have those original articles. Let me move down.
Lost it.
Those books you had, where Kareem said, where you get the books from? Where can he find them?
Wa alaikum salam. These ones were just on Amazon, I believe. Yeah, I believe both on Amazon.
What's the name of them?
One is Dar al-Islam Principle, Praxis, Movement by Kamal Hassan Ali. And that gives like more information on the structure that they had and stuff, the different emirs and everything. And this one is more of like a personal story. The Dar al-Islam Movement, American Odyssey, Revised. That's more of like a personal.
Put it up so they can see the cover. And what's the other one?
And this one.
Oh, okay.
And it's another book out there where it talks more about Imam Yahya Abdul Karim, how he was teaching tasawwuf even in the 60s to special students like that, where he had tasawwuf even before Jelani, and it talks about the structure and stuff like that too, and how they started, how they formed from State Street Mosque, and the reason why they left State Street Mosque and stuff. But I can't remember the name of the book. I haven't seen the book. I just saw the PDF form of it where you can read online.
Okay. Rook is the funniest. Oh man. When Islam was being established in black communities, were they privy to the different madhabs, or were they just focusing on being righteous Muslims? They had to learn as they grew.
Well, you had some that had exposure, because you had the Tabligh Jamaat that brought like the Hanafi, where you had like, if you ask most of the older Muslims back in that era, they would tell you that they were Hanafi because that was available at the time. They had but it wasn't like the full exposure to it. So I know the Tabligh Jamaat, they brought that Asian, that Pakistani variety. You had few that study on their own, but the general masses weren't really exposed to madhabs like that. That's why you had the different groups bringing their own foreign ideologies in. So it was because of lack of exposure. Not because of choice that they weren't with the madhabs.
What ideas do you have to break the cycle of the Wahhabi doctrine that's being pushed in our inner city communities?
I think this is a start. This is like a big start. Embracing, like going to them where they at. A lot of people are online. A lot of people are online every day. I mean, I'm glad we were able to take advantage of this, because you ain't gonna find a lot of people in the masjids. You're gonna find them online. A lot of Muslims, a lot of black Muslims are not a part of any communities today and don't even know that they're supposed to. It's a different time, different time period. You can't even expect the community life when it's not even family life. The family life is the start of community life. Strong families. Build strong communities. So a lot of people don't even have family life. They're really isolated. So you can get people online. If you can't get them there, then if you do see them, then you can just have confidence that you can teach what you know. Learn enough of what's available of the right methodology with confidence. Then we can teach people what we know and direct them to those who can teach them better. And we just have to get it running like that. This is definitely a beautiful platform that we have.
Hey, Abu Muwadda, he said, do you go to Masjid Abu Bakr al-Siddiq on Industrial Mile Road in Columbus? He said they used to have good lessons teaching the methodology of Ahl Sunnah. Are you aware of that place?
I think that's the one that has a new building. I think that's the Somalian masjid. I think they built a new masjid recently, and that's just for Juma that I would go. Like I got too much dunya down in Columbus. Like I said, when I was in Canton, when I didn't have no money, didn't have nothing like that. I was in the masjid like 5 times a day, and community, all that, classes and all that stuff. Columbus, I've just been working. I got to balance the dunya and the deen. I'm working so crazy, so I'm not even aware of what's going on within these different masjids. But I know blacks, we don't really have our own. So it's not really no inner city service reflecting the people that are there, except for, like I said, the masjid, the Warfteen masjid, and then it got the Salafi masjid. But that masjid Abu Bakr Siddiq is a Somalian masjid, I do believe. And I don't know how. For me, yeah, maybe I could, but I don't know how much I actually could benefit from them. With me not knowing Arabic enough and all that stuff like that? And definitely not the average black Muslim will feel comfortable there.
That's a good point that you raised. That sometimes we overlook that when and that's probably the wisdom where you have communities that are based primarily around the ethnicity of the people that go to that masjid. Because if you would go to a masjid where you're not familiar, especially as new Muslims, that could be quite challenging. That's a good point. Imam Naeem said that Farouk is a closet Maliki. I didn't know. Farouk, don't worry, alhamdulillah, Farouk, we on you. I don't care what they say about you. You my mans. Me and you got history.
Shout out to Imam Naeem.
All right, we're gonna have to bring you back because you got a lot of questions. Well, you got one more. I'll take one more because we got to close out at the sleepy warning already, so I gotta slow it down. Where was that question? I just went by it. Oh yeah, he answered that question already. You answered that one. Okay, mashallah. So we'll come back. Guess we'll have you again. They really people really benefited, from your discussion. May Allah reward you and keep you strong, inshallah ta'ala. We're all doing our dua. Tomorrow, our program will begin at 7:30. Our guests who will join us tomorrow will be Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, who's presently in Detroit at Darul Rahma. So he will spend time with us tomorrow. But we're going to start early tomorrow at 7:30, so that we can have a little bit more time with Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya. And inshallah, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Barakallahu bikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira bisir asrar al-Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.